This relatively new weekly paying ETF is still shocking me by its returns and performance so far. And as more time goes on, I personally am getting more and more convinced that QDTE, the Innovation 100 one-day till expiration cover call strategy ETF, might be the true ETF for the future when it comes to income generation. Now in this video, we're going to go over what this ETF is and what's happened with this ETF as of recently, as well as back testing it since inception. Then later on, I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts on the ETF and what I'm planning on doing with it moving forward. So if you're an income-focused investor, I promise you're going to want to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into this one. If you are a dividend investor who wants to level up your portfolio, you need to be tracking your dividend income consistently. And that's why I created the perfect dividend tracker that I've used to scale my dividend income up to all-time highs over the last year. Now, along with this dividend tracker, you're also going to receive my A to Z dividend investing ebook, which shows you how I personally started from $0 several years ago to now where I earn over $7,500 per month in dividends. So if you want this tracker and the ebook, go to the first link down below in my description and grab it today. Now, to not waste any time, QDTE, once again, the Innovation 100 one-day till expiration cover call strategy ETF is brought to us by Roundhill. And it says right here, this ETF utilizes a synthetic cover call strategy that seeks to provide current income on a weekly basis while also providing exposure to the price return of the Innovation 100 index. Now, the ETF is the first ETF to utilize 0 days to expiry or 1 day till expiration options on the Innovation Index or the Innovation 100 index as defined in the fund's prospectus. QDTE seeks to provide overnight exposure to the Innovation 100 index and generate income each morning by selling out of the money 1 day till expiration calls on the index, and of course this ETF is actively managed. Now this ETF early on was either sort of loved and or hated and sort of seemed like an ultimate income generation strategy or a gimmick to some investors. And I honestly have been sort of watching from the sidelines, seeing how this strategy played out, because again, it is sort of a relatively new strategy to me, but getting paid income on a weekly basis is very, very attractive, especially for some of us investors that want to utilize income generating assets later on to pay for things like expenses and bills. Now looking at some more facts when it comes to QDTE, the distribution rate is 26.87%. So the distribution rate is still up there very, very high, but it's not necessarily as high compared to some other products like we're seeing from YieldMax, but still a steady 26% distribution rate is very, very nice. Now it says down below why QDTE. Now for when it offers weekly distribution, it says QDTE seeks to pay weekly distributions out of sold option premium. Income potentials number 2, QDTE seeks to generate income through a cover call strategy on the Innovation 100 index and harnesses volatility. This ETF sells 1 day till expiration options on the Innovation 100 index and seeks to exploit structural market mispricings. Now the expense ratio for QDTE is 0.95%, so it is pretty priced to hold on to, almost an entire point. But assets under management has been going up significantly ever since the launch of March 7th of this year, so this fund is becoming more and more popular. Now to get into some of the fun stuff, obviously distribution history, or to see how much this ETF has been paying investors every single week. Yes, not every single month or quarter, every single week. This is going to be very interesting to look into, and again, is going to give you an idea of what this ETF is really made of. Now before we go through the distribution history, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this just as a side note. I think getting paid income from an investment every single week is about as good as it gets, especially for us investors that for years now have been buying into monthly paying dividend stocks or ETFs. Getting paid once a month is already amazing, but getting paid every single week is even better. Now I get it, you can really look at it like it's all the same difference if you get paid $1 every single month or 25 cents every single week. It's more or less the same difference, but getting paid more cash flow more frequently, I mean, who doesn't really want that? Now the most recent payouts from QDTE, this is why I want to make this video, because again, we do have more and more data to go off of now as the days, the weeks, the months go on. So 23.5 cents just as of recently, that's a massive payout on a weekly basis. 22 cents, 25 cents, 25 cents, 26 cents, 20 cents. So basically it's been a very, very long time since this ETF has even paid under 20 cents on a weekly basis. Now even a 19-cent payout is still massive if you were to annualize it out, but as of the last several weeks, we're talking well above 20 cents on most weeks. Now, if we go all the way back since inception, there's been times where probably volatility is higher, where premiums are a little bit juicier, where this ETF was even paid out north of 30 cents or even 50 cents on a weekly basis. But even if this ETF consistently pays out, let's say 20 cents 4 times a month, that's still a massive payout for an ETF that costs around $43 per share. Now, one thing to be concerned about on the payouts, especially if you are trying to utilize an ETF like this to pay for things like bills, expenses, or your lifestyle, because it's not necessarily going to pay the same amount every single week, this is going to be something to consider on whether or not it's going to be the right investment option for you. But like I said, the more time that goes on, the more of an idea on what we're sort of going to be expecting when it comes to the payouts. Now, by looking at everything we saw so far, this ETF seems pretty good, almost too good to be true, but we do have some bad news when it comes to QDTE. On the max time frame, the ETF is down around 5.02%. It started off trading back in March around 45.58. Now it's just a few bucks below. Now, obviously, if we were to count all those payouts, the total return is more than green, which I'm going to share with you guys here in a second. But still, a lot of us dividend or income focused investors do not want to invest into something that's going to decay over time, because telling you guys from experience, I own a ton of QYLD, for example, and this ETF I started buying probably in this range. I averaged down, of course, and I got paid every single month since, but it's still not fun holding onto an investment if, of course, it's going to decay in price. Now, QDTE is not really decayed anything crazy so far. It's down around 5% or so since inception, but it is still something very, very important to watch and a big warning when it comes to any sort of income focused strategy out there. But I promised you guys that this ETF, at least since inception, has offered a nice, healthy, positive total return. So with dividends being reinvested, QDTE since inception has returned around 19.25%, with them not being reinvested around 16%. Now this annualizes out to around 26%, and this is over the last 0.75 years. Now without dividends reinvested, we're talking around 21%. So either way, even on the lower end of things, QDTE for a more income-focused investment has still offered investors a nice amount of cash flow and minimal decay so far. But the even crazier thing to me, and this is one of the other main portions that I wanted to make this video about, if we were to stack up the performance of QDTE next to the NASDAQ 100 over this same exact time frame, they are basically neck and neck, if not QDTE is even above if you were to reinvest those dividends. Now the important takeaway here is that even if you invest into something that's more income focused or income generating like QDTE, you're not necessarily going to think you're going to outperform the underlying index that of course is more growth focused. And honestly, a lot of income focused investors are more or less okay with that. But in the case of QDTE, it is basically keeping up right with the underlying more or less, which is very, very impressive. So what are my personal takeaways when it comes to QDTE, the Innovation 100 one day till expiration cover call strategy ETF from Roundhill? So far, this ETF is looking very, very promising, and not to mention the fact that it pays out income on a weekly basis. That alone is almost enough for me to buy a few shares here and there, just out of the novelty of it. But in all seriousness, this ETF has outperformed my expectations and is doing a lot better than I thought it was going to do when I first heard about it several months ago. Now, I personally don't have any shares of QDTE in my portfolio as of right now, and that's just because I personally am focused on building out other positions that offer sort of similar yields and or income generation strategies. But that being said, moving forward, if I want some more exposure to income, especially weekly income, which I don't have any exposure to as of right now, QDTE or XDTE or of course RDTE are going to be very, very high up on my list to add to my portfolio, and I'm positive that as more and more time goes on, we are really going to see what these ETFs are made of. So now that we talked about the QDTE ETF, I shared with you guys what this ETF is, how it works, how much it's paid investors historically, and even how it's performing much, much better than I thought. I lastly, most importantly, want to hear from you guys down below. When it comes to QDTE, do you currently have any shares of this one in your portfolio? Let me know yes or no down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.